Okay, hello guys and welcome back. In our previous video we talked about the interface of the program, which is like just a description of kind of the drop down menus that you see up here is one section. You got your toolbars here in the center, that's another section. You got a toolbar on the right side, sorry, left side over here. On the right side you've got your layers, you've got properties, display, you've got your help menu, which is really helpful. And down here at the bottom right hand side, you got your snaps, your object snaps, and your grid snap. That's for drawing line work and stuff. And so in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about just navigating 3D space in Rhino, and just kind of understanding what these four viewports are here, okay? So the one to pay attention to most is the upper right hand one here. That's your perspective view. And if you click in this box here with your right mouse button and just toggle around, you can kind of play around in 3D space and kind of see your work area there. Okay, if you roll your middle mouse button out, you can see the grid that you're working with. So this is kind of like your ground plane or your work area. Okay. If you want to change the size of that grid, you can go up here to the options button I mentioned in the very first video, and you can go to grid. It's underneath annotation, and then you can change that from 100 millimeters to something else, like say 200, and just double the size of it. Okay. And so the bigger the grid, the bigger object you can work on. So navigating in 3D space in Rhino is not hard, but there are some tricks to it. Okay. The thing that can be confusing is once you start to work with other CAD packages, like once I start getting into SolidWorks and so on, just rolling around in 3D like this is going to take a different set of buttons on the mouse. So in SolidWorks, it's the middle mouse key that that allows you to toggle and dip around in 3D. But here in Rhino, it's the right mouse button. So as you flip back and forth between both programs, it can be a little bit difficult to remember which one's which, and there's always a little kind of just a little learning curve as you flip from one to the other. So Rhino, it's the right mouse button. Play around with that. Now you can combine the mouse button with a keyboard shortcut as well to change the function. So if I hold down Shift and I go right mouse button, that'll allow me to pan around in 3D space. Okay, so you always want to have your left hand kind of hovering over the keyboard so that you can grab onto a couple of specific keys on the keyboard to just help you move a little bit quicker as far as moving around this 3D space. Okay, the Alt key, if you hold down Alt and go right mouse button, that'll allow you to zoom in and out. So that's the same function as the middle mouse button or the wheel, and that goes for Control. Also, if you hold down Control and go right mouse button, you zoom in and out. So I assume the reason Rhino does that is they're trying to compensate for people that are just using a 2-button mouse. So if you don't have a middle mouse button or a wheel, then you can use Alt and the right mouse button and Control to zoom in and out. Okay, so you want to get really quick with just being able to hit Shift and go right mouse button, Alt, zoom in, out. Really want to kind of practice this quite a bit so that you can move around really fluid inside the 3D space. Okay. So that's navigation, and it goes the same for all 4 of these viewports, right? It's the right mouse button to toggle around, and as usual in Rhino, there is a button for this as well. If you can't remember the mouse command, then you can go up here to this button here, and this is for panning around. This would kind of mimic the right mouse button in the top view, or if you're here in the perspective view and use that, that would sort of mimic the operation you get from holding Shift and right mouse button. Okay, so as usual, there's a button for everything in Rhino. Okay, so that's about that. I mean, just to talk about these 4 viewports here a little bit. You've got your top, your front, and your right view, and then your perspective view. This is them trying to help you just kind of think in 3D. If you're new to the game and you are just learning the ropes of drawing in 3 dimensions, and you haven't really trained your brain to think in 3D yet, then you're probably going to be approaching every single design you come up with from a side view profile or a top view profile, and then it's the combination of both that create the perspective view. But the better you get, the more quickly you're able to move into drawing and building in 3D. So once you kind of get your chops down a little bit, you'll be able to go here to the perspective view, and you can double click on this perspective view here, and it will expand out into fill the entire screen for you. So you can use that as your primary view, and then you can use these tabs down here in the lower left to cycle through the top, front, and right view, and it just gives you a little bit more real estate to work on. Okay, so that's that. All right, so we'll leave that just about like that. Okay. So for me, since I'm a SolidWorks user primarily, I like to have the perspective view as my primary view, and then I go top, front, right in a singular fashion, just because it's a little bit more like SolidWorks in that way, and it just helps me kind of understand my design a little bit more. But if you ever need to go back to the 4-panel view, you can just double click on any one of these tabs up here, and it will go back to 4-panel view. Okay. Or if you're expanded out like this, you can also go to this button here. Just hit that, and it will also do the same thing. So you got a button, or you've got the click of the tab. It's up to you. Okay. Also, let's take a look at what's going on over here too. If I hit that, over here I've got the help menu displayed, and if you look, after I hit that button, the help menu automatically updated with a description of that tool that I just used, the 4 Viewports tool. Okay, and it's giving me a little description over here of what that is and what it's all about. So that's something to bring up right there. In fact, I think it goes that way for any tool that I use. What I want to do now is start to talk just about drawing some line work inside the program. So let's see what happens when I go over here and I just grab the Polyline tool and I start to click some points. Okay, this is your Polyline tool. It connects multiple single lines together. Notice how the help menu immediately populates with description of the polyline. Okay, and that's super helpful for the new user. If you remember that that's happening, then you can look over here and you can get all the information about the tool that you're using. So I want to talk a little bit about what happens the minute we grab that Polyline tool. Okay, I want you to look up at the command line and notice that it doesn't say command anymore. It's giving me instructions on how to use this tool. It's telling me, please give me the next point of your polyline. It wants me to keep clicking. And with the Polyline tool, which means multiple line tool, I can continue clicking and creating multiple pieces of line work until I'm done. And when I am done, it's saying, please press enter when you're done. Okay, so all the time in Rhino, you're hitting enter to confirm that you're done using a tool, that you have finished using that tool. And when you do hit enter, it will confirm that usage, leave behind the work that you created, and then it will go back to saying command line. Okay, so let's just draw some more polylines here, and this time let's do it with the grid snap on. So I'm going to scroll down here to the bottom and go to grid snap, and I'm going to go and try to click around, and you can feel it more than you can see it in this video. But as you hover your mouse over the grid, you'll notice that it's clicking and snapping to every little grid point that you come up against. And this can be very helpful as far as just drawing accurate line work that's defined, you know, by the grid. The grid is it's a tool that you use to measure. So especially, you know, in Rhino, you're going to use the grid quite a bit to kind of define yourself. Now that I'm done drawing this line work, I can do a couple of things. I can hit the enter key up here, which is what the command line is telling me to do, and that will drop the tool and finish the work I've done with that tool. I can also go here to this white arrow, and that's the cancel button. Okay, and what that'll do is it'll cancel the work that I've done with this tool and delete the work that I've done. Or I can just, if I want to keep the work I've done and just stop using this tool, I can just hit the right mouse button and it will do the same thing as the enter key. So quite a few options there. Okay, this line, I kind of don't like this line too much. It's a little jagged, especially because I had the grid snap on and I want to get rid of it. So I'm just going to highlight it like that, and then I'm going to hit the delete key, and not the backspace key, but the delete key that's right above it, and that'll just delete it. Really easy. Okay, so you see how these snaps work. It's not, you know, rocket science. You turn them on, you turn them off. If they're on, they will affect how the tool works. If they're off, they will not apply whatsoever. So object snap, O snap is another one. That's something we should talk about. If you turn on object snap, something unique happens. All of these options here in the lower left-hand corner turn on and allow you to define how you snap on to objects. Now that we've actually drawn a piece of line work, we can snap onto that object in very specific ways. We can either snap right onto the end of it, and if I grab another Polyline tool, you can see here as I get anywhere near the end of the line work, my cursor just jumps right over to it and snaps right onto it. And that is the end point condition of the object snap. There's also like midpoint. There's midpoint object snap. We turn off endpoint and go to midpoint. You can see here you can hover over a line and it will find the midpoint of that line and allow you to snap just to the midpoint. Look at that. And it really does, you feel it more than you can probably understand in the video. So just turn that on, click midpoint. There's also center object snap. That would be like if you have a circle and you want to go straight to the circle. There's quad. There's quite a few down here. I don't want to take up too much time going through each one, and they're pretty self-explanatory. So just take the extra time on your own to play around with those snaps a little bit. Object snap is a tool that can be really helpful as far as just being able to attach on to other objects that you've created in a very specific way. So. And then there is, as you can see here, my cursor is just stuck with that line tool. So I want to drop the tool here. So I'm just going to hit the right mouse button and drop that tool. Okay. The last thing I want to talk about here is going to be probably the gumball, at least as far as the snaps menu is concerned. And usually 99.99% of the time I'm going to have the gumball turned on because it is a unique feature to Rhino. It's something that differentiates Rhino from SolidWorks, and it's just one of the things that makes Rhino kind of fun. What it is a kind of a movement icon for things. So if you turn it on, you click on an item you built, you see this jack that pops up, right? The blue line, the green line, the red line. Just allows you to drag little bits of line work up and down any which way you want. You can rotate stuff really easily. I'm going to go full screen with the perspective view here to show you this. Okay, you can scale things by grabbing these squares. If you want to scale your drawings one way or another way, you can rotate a drawing really easily by just grabbing these rotation handles and rotating one way or another way. All right, and you can really quickly create a very dynamic interaction with the flat line work that you've drawn here. And this will come into play too when we get into talking about edit points and so on. So for now, I just want you to see what it looks like, okay? And, play around with it a little bit, okay? Feel that freedom of being able to move your sketch any which way you want, rotate it all the time. It's really fun to work with. So that's Gumball. I keep it on all the time, okay? There's also record history, which we'll get to later when we start drawing some surfaces and so on. Smart Track and Ortho and Planar. These are all things that will come up as we go through the program. So I think that's going to be it for this video. One last thing to talk about here. We'll go back to our top view, I guess, and we'll just take a look here. So I've got a pretty good selection of line work here, and let's pretend by accident I zoom way in. Maybe I zoom way too far in and I lose my workspace. Where's the things I drew? You start freaking out a little bit. There's one navigation tool to save you in that situation, and it's called Zoom Extents. And what it will do is it will automatically zoom your, view or camera angle to display all the items that you've drawn. So I'm going to go ahead. It's right here. It's called Zoom Extents. Okay. And it's under the Standard tab. And so when you hit that, it will just zoom you out to show you all the things that you've drawn. Okay. And it's rare that you need to use it, but as a new user, you know, you kind of do get a little frisky sometimes with the zooming in of stuff, and especially if you're like me and you're using a 3D connection mouse, it can be really easy to just press the wrong button, and then before you know it, here you are in nowhere, and I don't know, it can get tricky pretty quick. You're like, where did everything go? So even if you go back to the 4 viewports, and let's say you've zoomed in on a bunch of them, and you're just really lost and you're going, oh God, what do I do here? If you hover your mouse over the zoom extents button, you'll see here, this will be the first time we've talked about this, that there is a different tool or a different kind of function for which mouse button you hit underneath zoom extents. If you hit the left mouse button, it'll do zoom extents. If you do the right mouse button, it'll do zoom extents all viewports. You see that? If I hover my mouse over the tool, so if I hit right mouse button, it zooms them all back to display the items in all viewports perfectly. Okay, so that's the tool to learn for this video. And we talked about navigation, we talked about drawing line work, we talked about some snaps. I mean, we're starting to go somewhere with this program. So thanks for sticking with me 16 minutes. Oh man, I wish these were shorter, but I mean, think about it this way. Most of the stuff that I'm teaching you is based off of the Lynda tutorials, the essential Rhino 5 videos that they've got on lynda.com, and that sucker is like 7.5 hours or something like that. I've really tried to distill everything down to a kind of a real quick description of how to get going with this program. So we're moving right along. In the next video, we're going to talk about drawing some curves, which is right here. There is, as usual, a whole bunch of different types of curve tools that you can use. We're going to stick with interpolate curves, maybe a control point curve, and we'll talk a little bit about how to play around with that. So then from there, we're going to start doing some surfacing with those curves, and it's just a long road ahead. So thanks a lot for playing along, and I'll see you in the next one.